All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ian, and I will be teaching you all about Katello today. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of Katello before, or if you're here for pulp, if you used Foreman, but Katello is the intersection point, really, between pulp and Foreman, and I'll be going over today how you can use it. So for a quick kind of catch up on the stack that we're talking about here. Firstly, Foreman is the main service, and Katello is a plugin to that. Foreman is for managing physical and virtual machines. With Foreman, you can do things like configuration management, you can do provisioning, you can look at facts about the machine, and then what Katello brings is patching. And what Katello integrates into Foreman are the tools pulp and then also Candlepin. And we'll be focusing probably a bit more on the pulp side today. And so I've mentioned this before, if you can't remember what Foreman does, these three things, and honestly, monitoring these days, I think we probably should change that. It's not really monitoring in the live sense, it's more monitoring of what the configuration management tool reports back, like Ansible or Puppet, but provisioning, configuration management. And it's all in one web service that you can visit on your browser, or you can automate it with Ansible, you can use API calls, CLI, etc. And I'll show some screenshots and a bit of a demo later so you can get an idea of what it looks like. This is a diagram that explains Foreman's components pretty well. We've got web users, so these are the interfaces that you can use. For provisioning, we have this idea of compute resources, so you can provision to different providers. I suppose if you want to count bare metal in there, cloud providers, local hypervisors. Foreman does carry state, has a Postgres database in the back end, and it also has authentication. You can have different users and different roles that they can connect to. And then we also have this idea of smart proxies. So all the services that Foreman manages, really what Foreman is a tool that brings other tools together. But we have a method of talking to these tools, and that's through this thing called a smart proxy. I'll show you later. You can install them around the globe if you're a company that's at scale. Or you can just use them simply to talk to an external service that you have to on a smaller scale. Now pulp, for those of you who don't know, so pulp is our backend for the patching, the content management. Nice little quote there. Fetches, uploads, organizes, and distributes software packages. I suppose that's pulp in a nutshell. I've only listed a few of the things you can do here with pulp. So Ansible playbooks, I say arbitrary files. It's the file plugin. Containers, RPMs, debs. We also have Python packages support with pulp plugins, and there are some more pulp plugins that we don't even support yet. Now, I did mention Candlepin, and whenever it comes up, people are always curious what Candlepin does, and it's really for access management. So Candlepin is this service that helps us make sure the host needs certificates to access content that you want to be locked down. And it also works with Red Hat content, so it makes sure that you're able to access whatever things on the CDN you need to access. There used to be a lot more subscription management since we work with Red Hat stuff, but with this new thing called, well, new-ish thing called simple content access, you don't really have to manage subscriptions so much anymore. You just have to worry about them expiring. But that's all related to Candlepin. So I'll go over a bit of Katello, what Katello is at its core. But first I want to go over some terminology. You'll hear me say some of these words. We talk about content management when we talk about Katello. And when I say content, I know it's an overloaded term, but I just mean packages of some sort. RPMs, Python packages, container images even. A repository is a collection of content, so where all your packages live. Now, a product, this is where we start getting into Katello land. A product is a collection of repositories. Historically, if you look back, it has ties to how certain repositories are managed within like Red Hat related products, and then that ended up expanding into kind of the Katello ecosystem. And now today, it's pretty much a label for you to apply to some set of repositories. Hosts are how we call servers that you manage. And then errata, which is a way for you to essentially apply CVEs to your machines, I would say, apply fixes. To Katello, it's an advisory with a bunch of packages assigned to it that fix the problem. This will be an important concept later. Now, what Katello brings, I've kind of blocked it into three things here. We have content procurement and distribution, how you get your content locally down to your machine, and then how you send it to your hosts, how you make it available. There's also patch automation, which is how we install new updates on your machines. And then there's lifecycle management. So once you have the content, how do you split it up amongst the machines in your environment? Development machines probably shouldn't have the same content as production, so you can split it up like that. And you can send your content through a lifecycle. And this is pretty much what I described here. Let me see if I missed anything. So an interesting part about the software lifecycle, the way that it works is it's based on essentially snapshots. And I'll get into a bit of that later, but you can save an older version of repositories from Katello, and that's powered by pulp repository versions. Now, I know you don't have to read this all right here, but generally, this is what a repository looks like in Katello. You'll define it. You'll define some attributes about how you sync the repo. You'll see a part about what is synced in it if you have synced it. You'll have an option to upload content. And this, if you haven't seen it before, is the Foreman UI. So a repository, you have to give it some sort of upstream URL. In this case, I pointed to Fedora 39. Some repository types have different ways that the upstream URL looks like. For example, if you're doing containers, you'll put the address of the registry, and then below it, you'll put a link to the actual container image, like BusyBox, for example. You can see where it's published, so you can click on this and see all of your files. And then on the right here, you get some distribution information. Like, for example, since this repository I synced, you can provision from. You'll see bootable is true. So you could use Foreman provisioning at this point and provision your hosts from the files that you've synced here. And we also, one thing that's very powerful about syncing content, not only is it on your system, but we have lots of data about it. Oh yeah, David.
What does bootable is true mean?
So that essentially means there is
Kickstart tree in there?
yes, there's a tree info file,
Okay.
right? There's a kickstart tree, yeah. And I'm not sure if that's just for enterprise Linux type repos. I think there might be a connection there with the Debian side as well, but I can't fully remember. So this content that we have, you can see all the packages that are in the repo. You can search them. You can look at the errata. We have lots of data available once you sync it. And there's very powerful things we can do with that. You can actually tell what packages on your system need to be updated. And that's one core part of Katello, is being able to tell, does this errata apply to this host? And we, yes, as I said before, we also allow for uploading things directly if you don't want to sync them, which, you know, perhaps your packages you're building aren't necessarily somewhere that you can sync from. And this is namely for really every content type that supports upload besides containers, because for containers you can just push. You don't have to upload a tarball or something like that. You just do, you know, your podman push as you normally do. Now, getting into some of the details of how we sync content, we have some download policies here. These probably look familiar if you know Pulp. So, on-demand content, you get the metadata, you don't get the content right away, the content is cached when a client requests it. Immediate, everything's downloaded all at once, so it's right there. Immediate is great if you are exporting content. So we have users who use this in air-gapped situations. So if you'll have your, I guess I'll call it your upstream Katello, you sync your content, you can export that either as tarballs or as we call it a syncable format, where you export it in a repository structure, you can make a web service, and then the disconnected one, when you expose it to that, will sync the content. Immediate is perfect for that because, well, you can't export the content if it's on demand because it's not on your disk. And then streamed is another one where the content is not cached. It just acts like a proxy. We also have mirroring policies for metadata. This doesn't apply to, actually, does this apply to every content type now? It might. It used to not. So a couple options here. They're called additive, content only, and complete mirroring. Additive means every time you sync, all the new stuff is added to your repo. Your repo grows and grows. Content only means it matches what's upstream, but Pulp is generating the metadata. Like if you sync AppStream, you'll get the metadata, and Pulp will parse that, and then it'll create the repo data for you. Now, complete mirroring is neat because Pulp just pulls the metadata directly from the upstream source, puts it on your system, so you really look like you are the source. But I don't believe there are, I think maybe some repositories that do things that are incompatible with this. So you get a nice little warning if you try to do that. And for additive, we have features as well for keeping only a certain amount of versions of the RPM. So these are some of the scenarios for getting content in here. If you're syncing, it goes to Pulp, and then Katello indexes that data from Pulp so you can see it. Or sorry, that was the upload scenario, or that was the sync scenario. For the upload scenario, it gets sent to Pulp, and then Katello indexes it for sync. Katello makes the request to Pulp to sync it. Pulp gets it, and then we index it from Pulp. So, yeah?
So just a little question, is the upload scenario synchronous or asynchronous? Because I vaguely remember that we were uploading files at some point and it was asynchronous. And for example, for CI/CD, we were building RPMs and trying to upload it to Pulp, and it was basically just the command was returning immediately. And we had to really pull the state to be sure that things were all the metadata were generated or not. Is this still the case today, or?
I think you were using the API directly.
I think we were using the API directly. Yes.
Okay.
Is this with Pulp or with Katello?
It was Pulp Katello. It was maybe the Pulp API, yes, not the Katello one.
Okay.
The Pulp API recently added a synchronous upload
Okay.
endpoint, and if you're using the CLI prefers to use the synchronous.
Okay.
So if you're not uploading it to a specific repository, it will be synchronous, and then whenever you actually add the content to the repository, that's when you will have a task. Because we only want to operate on repositories, because they need to be operated in the order that the operations were received.
Okay. So it would be feasible with extra flags, also extra parameters passed still, or no? The synchronous way would be feasible today with the new version. So
the latest version of Pulp.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you are using it through Katello, our Foreman tasks would pull it for you anyway. So if we don't, I guess you said it just recently became synchronous. So since we probably haven't integrated with that yet, I guess at that point, if you're using Katello, you could rely on Foreman tasks at least. And once you sync your content, your host can access it. Nice and easy, right? Now, so repositories, you can make them private or public. I'm not going to say they're exposed to the internet, but you can make it so you need certificates to access the content. and pulp helps us with that. It depends on the kind of content you're dealing with. If you're using like what we call Yum repositories, RPM content, if you make it private, you just need to register with Subscription Manager and then you'll see it. The same goes for Debian content, since we have a Debian build for Subscription Manager. And if it's public, well, you don't have to use Subscription Manager. It's just completely open. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about lifecycle management. So content views are how you create snapshots. A content view is a blueprint for how you create these. So inside a content view, you'll create repositories, you'll associate repositories that you already have created. So in this case, and they can be a mix. Like I have AppStream, BaseOS, some BusyBox container stuff, some random files. You can also filter the content. I can say, please exclude these random packages and include only the latest container tags. Then you click Publish, and you have your snapshot, which is called a content view version, and they're versioned by numbers. And you have all of your content. They're saved as repository versions in Pulp. Essentially, we're just redistributing repository versions in Pulp. This used to be a lot slower with Pulp 2 because we were actually copying content around, but these days, since it's just redistribution, we don't have to copy content. Now, there's a star there, an asterisk. If you had filters, we do have to copy it because you've changed the data that's inside the repo. We can't just redistribute what we call library repositories. So if you ever wonder why your repo publishing looks really slow, check if you have filters, and also check if you have dependency solving on. I'm not really going to talk about dependency solving here because we don't really recommend it anymore, but we do have an option where it attempts to resolve all the dependencies in a repo. If you filter things out, it will probably add them back in because you've broken your repository. Now, okay, you have all of your content in a content view, and you've published it, great. But what if you need to support many different distributions? What if you need to have your software paired up with, I don't know, different distributions like CentOS, you're testing Alma, you're testing Rocky, I don't know. In this case, you have a couple options. We have something called a composite content view. It's called composite because it's made up of, I guess, child content views. And so you can add multiple in a single one and then publish them all together. And then this is essentially just another way for you to redistribute multiple under one common name. So you can have a web application, a web server, and an operating system all in one and publish it together. So everything gets published just like a normal content view. We also have a auto-publish feature where if you have your child content view, if that publishes, you can automatically publish the composite to keep everything up to date. Now, this was a problem. It was our solution to people wanting to combine things. However, it was also a problem because it was painful to manage all of these composite content views. You might need lots of different versions of them, which means lots of publishing. So we now, and I think the essentially final work of this is being done in the release happening incredibly soon, within a week, I think. You can also attach multiple content views to hosts. I know I haven't talked about hosts yet. For anyone who knows Katello, this might sound like a pain point that's resolved. Historically, you could only have one host consuming from one content view, but now you can have multiple. So I just had to mention that since it riffs well on composite content views, and some people are quite excited for that. It also comes with a kind of change in naming. A host would have a content view and a lifecycle environment because those two together point you to a content view version. And now we call them content view environments. So you might see things about that later. But anyway, with how these content view works, so you have your content view version, but now you want to apply the lifecycle management to it. Once you publish, Immediately, it's in a lifecycle environment called library. This is the default lifecycle environment. You can then promote this to your different lifecycle environments. Typically, they're in a chain. So if you've forgotten something, all you have to do is publish again, and then re-promote, promoting it to a new step in the lifecycle environment chain. And there you go. And along the way here, you've probably tested, worked with your software, made sure it is safe, and now it's in your production machines. And one thing I want to clarify, some people get confused and think that this is installing it on their machines. This is just making it available. It's completely up to you for how this content gets on your machine. And we can help with that, but it's not automatic with this. If something goes wrong in production with a new update, you can just promote it to roll it back. I suppose you can call it demotion in that point, but anyway, it's always promote to us. And then in practice, you'll have different sets of hosts with different content view versions that it's associated with. I'm going to talk about hosts now. Are there any questions up until this point?
Yeah, just one question. A content view from the point, if I look, when I subscribe to my machine, for example, as a private repository, and a content view is just another repository from the machine, it's just the name of the repository, it's just another repository.
Exactly. Okay. So it's a different path, yes.
A different path, yeah. But this,
yeah, and just to clarify, so it's specifically the content view version, because the content view itself, that's just the blueprint.
it's just a blueprint.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a content view version in a specific lifecycle environment, right?
Yes, because the lifecycle environment is what gives it the name. So to get the full path, you need the content view version plus the lifecycle environment. Exactly. The repo itself is just the content view version, and then the lifecycle environment is what gives you the different repo paths. It's really just a label at the end of the day, but we apply a lot of concepts around it.
Yeah, but just to repeat my understanding, as far as the machine is concerned, it has a repo config file that has a URL to the repository, and that URL is formed by having the content view version.
Content view, actually, at that point.
Content view
Plus the lifecycle environment.
plus the lifecycle.
Yes. From a content view and a lifecycle environment, you can always get back to the content view version.
You mentioned that you are using subscription manager to register the host, right? And we've been trying to do so because in my environment we have the on-premise format that we are currently implementing.
Yeah.
We use a bunch of machines on VMware, some in Azure, some in AWS, and unfortunately we have the Oracle Cloud infrastructure as well.
Okay.
And the deal with that is that we were able to registerable Red Hat Rocky Linux machines or even some other flavors that are based in Azure and all premise. But when it comes to the Oracle Cloud, we can't basically make it working because in the Oracle repositories there is no such package.
You don't need to register your machine. You can have unprotected repositories, then they are not protected by certificate, and then you can just point to the URL of what pulp is publishing.
Right.
But
So
I think that is not what Red Hat is advising for license reasons, but
I mean,
Well-
that we can't register it in the Foreman itself, right?
So the issue is that the subscription manager RPM isn't available.
Yeah.
I mean, could you just get it from another source?
because it's not Red Hat.
Yeah, it's not.
Right.
But it's like a Red Hat clone, right?
Right, but I mean, subscription manager is there for Fedora. It's there for
Yeah,
CentOS,
and there is a separate one for Rocky Linux, for example.
and even Debian. We've rebuilt it for Debian as well.
Oh, okay.
We grabbed the one from Rocky Linux and we've installed it on Oracle Linux and it works.
That's frankly what I would suggest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that it's not like a legit way, and I was looking for some proper one.
I mean, it depends on your definition of legit, I suppose. Because otherwise, without that, you can't register, and then you do lose out on a lot of the features. So, I mean, that's what I would have done.
All right. Where is the Debian package? Where can I find it? We have a similar problem. The Debian package is by Attic, you mean, or?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And to manage the subscription manager package, because I guess you want us to like pre-bake it in an image, so we provision a machine with subscription manager, I assume. Can we update the package with Foreman? Is that a possibility, or the subscription manager package itself?
Oh, yeah, of course. So yeah, you can have your repository host that, and then your machine could update directly from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do expect us to pre-bake it in the image, I assume, because otherwise we cannot use all the features.
If you don't have a way to get it otherwise, I suppose so. Yeah.
And we built the package itself from source. There is like a nice open source pipeline where you spin up a container over Linux and then take the source, compile it, and package it. And
All right.
if you search, you can find the pipeline.
Thank you.
It's a bit of a hassle though.
What is actually the advantage of using subscription manager if you are not using Red Hat, paying Red Hat, let's say, I mean any other distribution? Because subscription manager actually makes the fact that Katello by design is not allowing you to publish RPM coming from the Red Hat network thingy without being protected. But if you unprotect all your RPM, all the repositories published by POP, you absolutely don't need to have a subscription manager.
Yeah, so
Is there any other advantage? Because registration can be done by Puppet as well, I believe. That's
Yeah.
the first time you run, so that's why I'm asking you any reason why you are using that or...
Yeah. So Subscription Manager, there's a lot of features since it's grown over the years that have connected in with the Subscription Manager registration. Sure, if you just need access to your content, no, just make them unprotected, that's fine. There are a lot of facts that get uploaded by Subscription Manager. So we act as a, we proxy some of the information and we cache it. I'm also giving a talk later about some of the boot C stuff, and a lot of those facts right now are uploaded through the Subscription Manager fact uploading. But then also with global registration, it's kind of handy because you'll just register it and see the host pop up. But yeah, it's certainly not required.
We have Puppet basically at our company, and basically you cannot then manage your repository by using Puppet. You need to do all the work of managing the repository on Katello itself, and then it's being uploaded or pulled or whatever to the machine via Subscription Manager. Then you cannot use that really Puppet. So.
Right. And I will say Subscription Manager also makes the connection that lets us keep track of what's installed on your machine.
Okay.
And we have the whole nice new host UI where everything is, because we don't have content host anymore, if people remember what that was.
That's indeed one of the features that is interesting as well to be able to
Yes.
what's exactly installed on the machine.
ARAD applicability is a big part of that.
All the packages listed.
Yeah, okay.
With the rid of parts and stuff, so we can easily apply fix it.
Oh, Dennis?
Can you give an example of facts that get uploaded? Just like one example.
Number of CPU cores,
Okay.
like basic stuff. But then also, I'll talk later about this, like in my other talk, boot C stuff. Like what container image are you running? Then it gets more interesting.
What about list of packages that you're running?
Yes, but that's part of the package profile that gets uploaded from Subscription Manager.
But it is Subscription Manager. That
Yes. That's actually, yeah, I was being pedantic in my head because technically those aren't facts. It's like a different thing, but you're right. Okay, I should probably keep going. So let's talk a bit about hosts. So I just talked about how content hosts went away. This is the new host page. Well, new as in I probably took this screenshot 2 years ago. But lots of things you can see. An overview of all of lots of facts and bits of information, even more details. Content. Content is where you'll see what updates are needed. And only one place you have to go to. No more double inventories, which is what we used to have. And this, by the way, is also the normal Foreman host page. If you know just Foreman, you'll probably recognize this. What Katello adds is this content tab. Okay, so since I briefly went over hosts, there's this idea of activation keys, and this ties into Subscription Manager. So if you create an activation key, it's a way for you to register this machine more quickly. So you can use Subscription Manager by itself by saying what content view environment you want to use, or you can use an activation key where you can, as part of the activation key, say what content view environments you want there. You can say which repositories you want there. And you can even determine which repos should be enabled by default. So if you register with an activation key and you say, I want these enabled and these not, then your host will just be like that. The activation key also does act as a credential in a way. And this is useful in global registration. I would say this feature isn't new anymore. It was new maybe a few years ago. And it's a workflow where you give a bunch of information about where you want the host to live, which smart proxy you want it registered to, et cetera, et cetera. And then we generate you this script that you can copy and paste. And this is based off of a template in Foreman. And templates, if you don't know Foreman, are something that you can clone, create yourself. They do things like provision or remote execution jobs are based around them. And then your machine will run this script, and it will do things like get the CA certificate, run some prep, and then it'll hook itself into Foreman. And you don't have to copy and paste this. There are also ways to automate it. I haven't done that myself, but now, and you can see here at the very bottom, activation keys are one of the things you can attach to it. And activation keys are plural, because if you didn't know, you can actually have multiple in here. And they actually follow a priority. Once the host is registered, we have remote execution, which lets you run things on the host remotely. There's a couple of methods of remote execution. There's SSH, and you can choose which user you want to SSH into. If you don't like the idea of having something SSH into your machines, we also have a pull-based model. We call it pull mode remote execution. I think that's the current name. And that installs an agent on your machine, this project called Yggdrasil. And it pulls the commands. So it's kind of nice if you're disconnected, perhaps. Your machine's disconnected. I don't know if it's on a train or something. Then it comes back, connects, and then it sees the commands and then runs something.
Can you retell the name of the project, because it's or write it down maybe?
It's called Yggdrasil. If you start typing YGG, it'll come up. YGG is like the shortened name for it. But if you just look up pull mode in our documentation, then you'll get it. So remote execution is nice too, because you can also filter hosts. You can run them on a schedule. And you can do that, again, it's all within the UI or the API or any of the other means for interacting with Foreman. You can also get failure reports, which is cool. So one example of remote execution, this is the content tab. Here we have some RPMs installed on your system. They all say they're upgradable. You can click the upgrade button and upgrade them via remote execution. And then you can do that. This is a single host. You can also do that in bulk for multiple hosts. And this is where I get to errata. I'm not sure how many folks these days are used to talking about errata. I mean, if you're in like enterprise Linux stuff, I suppose you already know about it. But to just go over it, basically, it's an advisory with a bunch of packages, and they have different types. It's not just the Red Hat world that has errata. There's also Debian errata. And you can apply these to your host, and that will apply all of the package updates that are associated with it. There's associated CVEs with the erratum. You can see the number of packages. You can also see bugzillas, or I'll just say bugs. And then potentially module streams, since that's still a thing we have to worry about in the enterprise Linux world. Now, what's more interesting, and this is the old host listing UI, you can see the installable updates here, and there's little icons for the different kinds of errata. So at a glance, you can tell if the host has an issue. And also, if you have errata applicable, you'll see a red check mark here. So if you have errata that apply, you just install it. Easy. Now, what if it's not in your content view? Because I said there's snapshots, right? That means that your host isn't consuming from the latest and greatest. If there's like a Heartbleed thing or whatever that comes out, you won't have access to the packages. So we have something called incremental update. If you have something that you need to apply suddenly to all of your content view version distributed to whatever lifecycle environments, what you can do is you can copy this content directly into them. It will add it, and then the data will be immediately available. The idea here, and this is why we used to tell people to use dependency solving, the idea was, oh, you throw the errata in there and have it dep solve and pull in all the stuff it needs. Really, these days, the erratum should come with all the dependencies you need, which is why we still don't recommend it. It takes so much time. So if you're just starting out, just keep that unchecked. For incremental update, it is still the default to use dependency solving. We didn't want to check that off quite yet in case there are any people who rely on it, but we have an option to turn that off. Now, and I'll say one more thing about the errata. Remote execution, like I mentioned before, has all the support you need to do this. In the UI, I actually have a small video that I could show about this. You can go through a workflow that will incrementally update the content view and then also apply the patches to your machine via remote execution. Okay, and then I'll briefly go over just some infrastructure things. So let's say that you're global. Maybe Katello's in Boston and you have hosts in Australia. You can use these smart proxies. This might be a bad example because so in this case, that would be quite far to install from, quite a distance going over the network. I made this example a long time ago. I still think syncing this far is kind of strange. Anyway, if you have somewhere remote, what you can do is use a smart proxy, which has its own pulp in it. We'll install it for you, just like we'll install Katello, and you can have a separate instance of where your content lives. You just keep that in sync, and your host can register to that instead, and then they can get their content closer to where they live. We also, well, actually, I'll talk about this later. And what's nice is that this can operate on its own until needing another sync. So if you become disconnected, you should still be able to get your content. I talked about the air-gapped case, so I will skip this. We also support load-balanced content. So if you install a load balancer here, if you have multiple smart proxies talking to it, we support redirecting that content or redirecting that traffic to the machine that is the least driven. And recently, we didn't support that for container content because of how our smart proxies container registry was written, but we have that available now as well. And now I can show a little bit about how the UI looks. So I didn't expect to have to do this in mirrored mode, or not mirrored mode, but we'll see. Oh yeah, I can see it from here. Okay, so let me log in. So I have a VM running on my machine. We have a project called Forklift that uses Vagrant to provision machines with Ansible. That's how we make our development environments, and that's how I created this box. So I have a bunch of hosts in here. These hosts were created with global registration. Some of them are bootable containers. Some of them are normal machines. You can see I have a box here with an exclamation point. If we click in, we can see that it has some status that we have to worry about. Security errata applicable. You can go in here, go to content. You can see we have an erratum here. You can see some information about it. And then you can apply it directly from this screen. If we want to see what the content actually looks like, we can go to products. We also have a search bar on the top since the project has grown a bit. If you want to look at, let's see, we have a few things. I have some custom software. This is where the erratum came from. This is a custom repo that I synced. We also support container content, as I mentioned. And if we look, so I have a few things in here. I have apps from base OS, and then I also have a boot C image. We can see how many packages there are. You can click in here. You can see the different packages. We have a search thing in Foreman we call scoped search, where you can put in different queries like name is like this and version is this. And I think I'll leave it at that since we had a bit of a late start. I wanted to just see if there are any last questions. Yeah.
I have a question. I wanted to try and spin up a Foreman at home.
Yeah.
The minimal requirements seemed very large.
So yes, I agree.
Possible to get something smaller?
I can't.
Documentation, not really.
Do you remember which minimum requirements you saw?
Not exactly. No.
Okay.
I just used official documentation.
It was probably 4 cores and 20 gigs of RAM,
Yeah,
probably.
yes.
Yeah. So this, I believe, I have running. Well, we run a lot of our dev environments only on like maybe 10 gigs and a couple cores, and that's because we're running Pulp. So we want to sync things and make sure we have enough RAM for it. And even Pulp uses less memory than it used to these days. Are you talking just Foreman or Foreman and Katello?
Foreman and Katello.
Okay. So yeah, in that case, I would probably say you'd probably want to limit, I don't know, I would try 16 gigs to start. You could do 12.
So how does it work? 'Cause during the installation, if you choose, I think it's called minimal, it actually blocks you if you don't have
the tuning dev?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, tuning development.
Yes, exactly.
That's way smaller.
Last week. So.
It's as small, there's no more limit. It's like, I know what I'm doing mode.
Oh, okay.
Shut up, yeah.
I don't find that in the documentation. Maybe. Yeah.
I think it's because we have had a lot of cases in the past of people hitting memory issues, and we go, oh, well, how much RAM do you have? And they say, oh, I have 6 gigs. So, but honestly, yeah, you don't have to have that much.
Okay, so just big development, and I can have it as small as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have problems, just check your out-of-memory killer and see what happened, yeah.
I tried to install both Katello and Foreman on one machine using 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM.
Ooh.
And it failed to install, so if I added another 4 gigs of RAM, it went smoothly.
8 is less than 20, so that's
Yeah. Yeah. I would say,
I'm not saying that it will be working. It was just installed with that 8 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, okay.
It should be-
Start to keep running, it might be a problem.
Yeah. If you start syncing repositories with 40,000 packages, perhaps, yeah.
For the Foreman, if you have like an environment, upgrading the Foreman itself does not always go very smoothly. But if you break the Foreman itself with the Katello and all in it, yeah, then you break your complete environment. You do not have the ability to manage your environment. So is there like a way to set up like a master and slave, multi-master? Can we do such stuff so that there is like more or less a combination, high availability, or not for proxies, but for the server itself?
Yeah, for the server itself, I guess we have a few answers to that. Folks have asked this question a bunch before, of course. Well, the first way I'll say people have solved this is by having their whole setup as code. And I know this is not good for the downtime problem, more for the complete failure. People rebuild their environment, via Ansible or something. If you want to have multiple servers, you can do that. You would just rely on our import-export, probably. We also have something called inter-server sync, where we help you sync one server with the other one. The only thing is that's just for the repositories.
The problem is a subscription. It's like it can only be subscribed to one Foreman.
So, in that case, I can't remember exactly how this goes. But we do have a solution for syncing your actual like Red Hat subscribed content from an upstream to a downstream. I don't remember if you have to add the same manifest to both, but we can talk later if you want, because I can certainly remember, because I'm forgetting right now.
Today it's quite easy when we set it up as completely as code, but it will take some time to rebuild, of course.
Right, okay.
If you save your PKI, if you see the private key that you are using to sign your certificate that I installed on the machine, you should be able to redeploy your PKI. The trust should still work, right? Because client certificate.
Are you talking now?
Client certificate of application using SSL. So if you save that part and the